Tonight, Wall Street's wild ride over fears of a global economic downturn.
Donald Trump announcing he is pausing many of the tariffs he slapped on countries all over the world except China.
Canada's oil is about to ignite a global power shift that could dethrone the U.S. as the world's energy kingpin. Picture this: April 2nd, 2025, a day that didn't just mark another sunrise over Canada's vast wilderness, but a seismic shift in its destiny. Oil thundered through the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX. A $34 billion colossus finally wrestled into existence after years of blood, sweat, and legal warfare. This isn't just a pipeline, it's Canada's breakout moment, a roaring declaration that it's done playing second fiddle to the US, owned by the Canadian government since they snatched it from Kinder Morgan for $4.5 billion in 2018. TMX snakes its way from Alberta's oil-soaked heartland to the untamed Pacific coast, cracking open Asia's vast markets like a vault sealed shut for decades. Here's the raw truth. After tripling its capacity to 890,000 barrels per day, enough crude to fill 50 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single day, this beast kicked into commercial gear on May 1st, 2024. That's a decade behind schedule, with costs ballooning from a modest $7.4 billion estimate to a jaw-dropping $34 billion, per CBC News. Why the delay? A relentless gauntlet of opposition. Environmentalists raged over spill risks in the pristine Salish Sea, conjuring nightmare visions of oil-slicked shores and dying wildlife. Indigenous groups like the Tsleil-Waututh Nation hauled the project to court, arguing their voices were steamrolled in the consultation process. It took a 2022 Supreme Court ruling to finally bulldoze those barriers and let construction charge toward the finish line. But let's cut to the core. For decades, Canada's 3.8 million barrels of daily exports were chained to U.S. refiners in the Gulf Coast and Midwest, sold at a humiliating $50 per barrel discount because pipeline bottlenecks left them with no leverage. TMX smashes that chokehold. With 20 new storage tanks and an upgraded Westridge Marine Terminal, it's a lifeline from Alberta's landlocked crude to Asia's refineries, who drool over Canada's heavy, sour oil for its fit with their complex plants, per the International Energy Agency. Early shipments hit South Korea's GS Caltex in August 2024, tracked by Kpler's tanker data, a teaser of what's to come. Ottawa's salivating over a projected $20 billion annual economic jolt. Yet, the stakes are razor-sharp. Critics warn a single spill could turn BC's coast into an ecological graveyard. Think blackened beaches and a tourism industry on life support. The government's $1.5 billion spill response fund is their armor, but skeptics scoff. Is it enough to tame a disaster? TMX isn't just steel and oil. It's Canada flexing muscle it's never dared to show, stepping out of America's shadow and onto a global stage. This is no quiet victory. It's a thunderclap signaling a new era, and the world's taking notice. Now, shift your eyes south of the border, where Donald Trump's shadow looms large. It's 2025, and he's gunning for the White House again, wielding a weapon that's got Canada's oil barons sweating, a 10% tariff on Canadian oil and gas. This isn't a trade skirmish, it's a full-on assault on Canada's economic lifeline. Let's break it down with cold, hard numbers. In 2023, Canada shipped 143 billion Canadian dollars worth of energy exports to the US, per Statistics Canada. Think oil, gas, the works. The US slurps up 60% of Canada's crude imports, a hefty 3.9 million barrels daily fueling their Gulf Coast and Midwest refineries. Slap a 10% levy on that, and the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers estimates producer profits could bleed $10 billion annually. That's a gut punch to an industry already battered by TMX's delays. But here's where it gets ugly for the US. Goldman Sachs crunched the numbers and predicts pump prices could spike 80 cents per gallon. Picture that. Americans fuming at gas stations, wallets lighter, tempers flaring. In an election year, that's a political Molotov cocktail Trump might not dodge. For years, the US gorged on Canada's cheap crude, discounted by those pipeline bottlenecks. $15 less per barrel, a sweetheart deal they've taken for granted. Now, TMX is humming, and Canada's got options. Trump's tariff threat isn't just a flex. It's a desperate bid to keep Canada tethered, a bully's tantrum as the leash slips. The tension's electric. Canada's diversification drive didn't start with Trump's bluster. It ignited because the US got too comfortable. Why pour your crude into a neighbor who's ready to slap penalties when Asia's $15 trillion energy market is waving cash? The US built its energy security on Canada's back. 60% of its crude imports flow from the north, a dependency they can't shake overnight. Trump's playing with fire, betting Canada won't bolt. But Ottawa's not blinking. This tariff gambit could backfire spectacularly, pushing Canada into China's arms and leaving US refiners scrambling. The stakes: higher gas prices, squeezed refineries, and a superpower staring down its own arrogance. This isn't diplomacy. It's a high-stakes showdown, and the US might be the one blinking first. While Trump swings his tariff hammer, China's playing a smarter game: silent, ruthless, and devastatingly effective. Enter Rangshang Petrochemical, a refining titan with an 800,000-barrel-a-day hunger, sinking its claws into Canada's oil patch with surgical precision. June 2025. They ink a deal with Suncor Energy, Canada's heavy-hitting producer, locking in 200,000 barrels monthly from TMX's Pacific Tap. Ships are already booked, very large crude carriers steaming from Burnaby to Zhejiang, per Bloomberg. This isn't a toe dip. It's a calculated invasion. Rangshang set up shop in Calgary, Alberta's oil-soaked soul, in a sleek downtown tower, aiming to lock down 10% of TMX's 890,000-barrel daily capacity by 2026. They're not stopping at Suncor. Sources from the Globe and Mail spill that Rangshang's wooing Cenovus Energy 800,000 barrels daily in 2024, and Canadian Natural Resources Limited, plus global giants like BP and Shell with oil sands stakes. Their weapon? FOB terms, free on board, letting them control the oil from loading, rerouting tankers to Japan or India if prices pop. S&P Global pegs the arbitrage profits at $2 to $3 per barrel. That's millions in their pockets. Flexibility the US can't match. Leading this charge is Wang Jia, a 20-year oil vet who built PetroChina's Canadian trading arm in the 2000s. Deep ties, deal-making swagger, and a playbook to dominate. Why Canada? China's ditching Middle Eastern oil's geopolitical quicksand. Canada's heavy sour crude is their refinery gold. Per China customs, they sucked in 184,000 barrels daily from Canada in 2024, up 22% from 2023. Rangshang, a subsidiary of Zhejiang Rongsheng Holding Group, runs one of China's biggest single-train refineries, perfect for Alberta's sludge. Amid US tariffs and global volatility, this is their lifeline. What looks like a quiet trade pact is a seismic tremor. China's planting a flag in North America's oil heart, and Canada's rolling out the red carpet. The US sees a loyal supplier slipping away. China sees a reliable partner stepping up. This isn't just business. It's a power play that could redraw energy empires, with Canada caught in the crosshairs. Canada's not just dipping its toes in Asia. They're diving headfirst into a $15 trillion energy pool, betting the farm on a future beyond the U.S. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's $6.5 billion Global Markets Accelerator plan, rolled out in June 2024, is a war chest. $5 billion to turbocharge oil and gas exports to Asia, $1 billion to cushion farmers battered by U.S. trade spats. Suncor's Rangshang deal hit weeks later. Industries outpacing Ottawa's playbook. Then there's LNG Canada, a $40 billion juggernaut in Kitimat, BC, led by Shell and PetroChina. By December 2025, it'll pump out 14 million tons of natural gas yearly to Japan and China, where demand's soaring 8% annually, per the IEA. First shipments locked, 2 million tons to Asia, PetroChina holding a 15% stake, per Reuters. Ontario Power shipped 42 terawatt-hours to the U.S. in 2024, enough for 4 million homes, raking in $2 billion per Natural Resources Canada. Oil, gas, hydro. Canada's wielding a triple threat. targeting the Indo-Pacific's $47.9 trillion economy. But let's not kid ourselves. This is a high-wire act. Diversifying from a neighbor taking 60% of your crude isn't a pivot. It's a gamble that could spark a trade war. Trump's tariffs threaten billions in losses. China's hunger could lock Canada into a new dependency. Environmentalists howl about LNG's carbon footprint and TMX's spill risks. BC's coast hangs in the balance. Can Canada thread this needle, balancing profit and peril? They're not just shifting markets, they're rewriting their destiny, daring the US to push back and China to step up. The dice are rolling, and the fallout's anyone's guess. The US is waking up to a nightmare they didn't see coming. Canada's Asian pivot isn't a bluff. It's a gut shot to a superpower that's leaned on its northern neighbor for decades. TMX pumps 890,000 barrels daily westward. LNG Canada's gearing up to flood Asia with gas by late 2025, and the US is left clutching 60% of Canada's crude imports, 3.9 million barrels daily, like a lifeline slipping through their fingers. Trump's 10% tariff threat? It's a boomerang. If Canada ships more to China, US refineries might choke, forced to chase pricier Saudi or Venezuelan oil, $5 to $10 more per barrel, per Wood Mackenzie. That's billions in extra costs, passed straight to drivers already livid at the pump. The numbers don't lie. Goldman's 80-cent per gallon spike could turn US gas stations into political battlegrounds. Canada and China, despite Huawei brawls and canola bans, keep oil as their untouchable bond. No sanctions dare touch it, per Bloomberg. It's too critical. China's refineries need it. Canada's economy thrives on it. North America's oil pact is unraveling, and the US is scrambling to plug the hole. Refineries built for Canada's heavy crude can't pivot overnight. Saudi light oil's a mismatch. Venezuelan supply's a logistical mess. Trump's tariff bravado could be his undoing. Push Canada too hard, and they'll double down on Asia, leaving the US to fend for itself in a pricier, uglier energy world. Alberta's cheering, Ottawa's strategizing, and China's grinning. Meanwhile, US consumers face the squeeze. This isn't just a trade shift, it's a reckoning for a nation that thought it could dictate terms forever. Can they claw back control, or will Trump's gamble fracture a partnership that's fueled America for generations? The clock's ticking, and the fallout's coming fast. While Canada pivots to China, another player storms into this energy and trade war. Brazil, Latin America's economic titan, isn't taking Trump's tariff threats lying down. On April 9, 2025, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva dropped a bombshell after the CELAC summit in Honduras. Facing Trump's 10% baseline tariff on Brazilian goods, Lula's vowed reciprocity hit the US back with equal force, but not before exhausting every negotiation trick in the book. "We'll use every word for negotiation that's in the dictionary first," he told journalists, signaling a cool-headed yet steely resolve. This isn't bravado, it's strategy. Brazil's Congress just armed Lula with the economic reciprocity law, a legal sledgehammer to slap counter-tariffs on any nation taxing Brazilian exports. Steel, coffee, oil, key US imports from Brazil, are now bargaining chips. Back in 2018, Brazil dodged Trump's steel tariffs with quotas. This time, Lula's not banking on exemptions. He's ready to escalate, even hinting at dragging the US to the World Trade Organization over steel levies. This is a nation fed up with being a pawn in Trump's America First chess game, flexing its own muscle to protect a $200 billion trade relationship with the US. The tension's thick. Trump's tariffs threaten Brazil's balanced trade stance. Exports to the US are just 12% of its total, about 2.2% of GDP. But the ripple effects could sting. Lula's playing a dual game. Negotiate to soften the blow, but prep for retaliation if talks crater. It's a model for Latin America. Colombia caved to Trump's tariff threats over migration, but Brazil's drawing a line. Mutual respect, Lula demands, or it's tit for tat. Meanwhile, China's watching. Brazil's a top oil and soybean supplier. Could this push Lula closer to Beijing, mirroring Canada's pivot? Trump's tariff gamble risks alienating another ally, handing China more leverage in the Americas. The US imports Brazilian crude and steel cheap. A trade war could spike those costs, echoing the chaos Canada's shift threatens. This isn't just about tariffs. It's a southern counterstrike in a global power play, and Brazil's not blinking. April 9th, 2025, sent shockwaves through global markets. Trump's sweeping tariffs hit like a freight train. Then, in a jaw-dropping twist on April 10th, he slammed the brakes. In a stunning U-turn, Trump slashed duties on dozens of countries to 10% for 90 days, but cranked the heat on China, jacking tariffs to a crippling 125%. China's shown no respect to world markets. He raged on Truth Social, claiming their retaliation to his initial 34% levy justified the escalation. Meanwhile, he dangled a lifeline to over 75 nations begging to negotiate. Japan, South Korea, Vietnam among them, pausing their pain at a lowered reciprocal 10%. This isn't a retreat, it's a recalibration to isolate China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent smirked to reporters. This was his strategy all along, goad China into a bad spot. The markets roared back, Japan's Nikkei surging 9%, S&P 500 clawing back trillions, lost in a 4-day nosedive. Bessent's the puppet master now, spearheading country-by-country talks blending trade, aid, and military strings. Trump's itching to deal personally. White House phones ringing off the hook per aides. But China's the real target. Bessent's calling them out on fentanyl and trade abuses, daring them to negotiate. For Canada, this is a wild card. Trump's pause eases pressure on Ottawa's oil exports. 10% is a slap compared to the 25% Canada dodged under USMCA. But China's 125% tariff wall could turbocharge Rangshan's hunger for TMX crude. Beijing's not backing down. They've vowed countermeasures since Trump's first salvo. U.S. refiners, already jittery, might lean harder on Canada if China's supply dries up. Ironic, given Trump's tariff tantrum sparked this mess. The U.S. is playing a dangerous game, rewarding restraint from allies while hammering China risks a full-on trade war. Global stocks bounced, but the dollar and bonds wobbled. Uncertainty's still king. Canada's pivot to Asia looks prescient. Brazil's reciprocity stance gains teeth. Trump's U-turn buys time, but the heat's on China, and the fallout could torch North America's oil ties for good. This energy war is a powder keg, and the fuse is lit. This is no mere trade shuffle. It's a radical redraw of the energy map. Canada's betting its future on Asia, China's seizing a reliable supplier, and the U.S. risks being left in the dust. Can Canada emerge as a global energy titan? Will China eclipse the U.S. as Ottawa's top customer? Are Trump's tariffs the spark igniting this shift, or a wrench jamming the gears? The stakes are astronomical: $500 billion in Canadian revenue, billions in U.S. losses, and a $15 trillion Asian market up for grabs. This energy war's just beginning, and the world's watching. What's your take? Drop it in the comments. We're diving into this unfolding saga. Hit subscribe and let's keep unpacking the chaos.
Might result in economic uncertainty affecting everything from home mortgage rates to the price of consumer goods. In emerging economies, overcoming these obstacles could mean more stable employment and higher standards of living. Failing to do so might lead to higher inflation and slower growth, impacting everyday budgets and quality of life. Chapter 7, Analyzing the Data and Future Projections. Let's examine the data behind these trends. Emerging markets now account for nearly 65% of global growth, and many analysts forecast that BRICS could eventually control a significant share of the global GDP. Indicators such as rising intra-block trade volumes, increased local currency usage, and higher central bank gold reserves all point toward a future where the traditional dollar-dominated financial order is gradually shifting. However, while the data shows diversification is underway, many experts believe that any significant erosion of the dollar's role will occur over decades, not overnight. What does this mean for you? Over time, as these trends solidify, you may experience a more resilient economy in your own country. For example, improved monetary policies could lead to a stable inflation rate and predictable prices at the pump and in grocery stores. If local currencies become stronger and more trusted, people might face fewer shocks from global economic turbulence. In addition, long-term investments in infrastructure and technology could create new jobs and boost the quality of public services, from better roads and hospitals to enhanced digital connectivity in rural areas. In summary, the expansion of BRICS marks a transformative shift in global economic and geopolitical power. By integrating new members, implementing zero tariff policies, and pushing for de-dollarization, BRICS is challenging the long-established Western dominance of global finance. While there are significant opportunities for growth, there are also formidable obstacles that the bloc must overcome. Crucially, these global changes are not abstract, they have a real, direct impact on everyday life. Whether it's lower prices, more stable jobs, or better public services, the ripple effects of BRICS' evolution will be felt by people around the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think these global shifts will affect your daily life? Drop your comments below and join the conversation.